Inside the League, our fantasy football preview special. Tyler Jacobs here with Michael Beller of The Athletic. Our buddy Matt Camp is going to join us a little bit later to discuss some pertinent fantasy topics that hopefully you can glean some information from to help you win your fantasy league. All right, let's start with some predictions, so to speak, maybe some superlatives we're going to give out to certain players. Every year, someone emerges as that breakout fantasy star. Bellers, there's someone around the NFL in 2019 you look at as a breakout fantasy stud.
All the talk in Green Bay last year was the Aaron Rodgers-Mike McCarthy situation, how Mike McCarthy was holding back Aaron Rodgers. That was not the only player. It was not the only Aaron that Mike McCarthy was holding back in Green Bay last year. He also did the same to a running back, Aaron Jones, and I think Aaron Jones is just set for a monster season with that McCarthy hurdle removed. Now Matt LaFleur at the helm in Green Bay. Aaron Jones has been excellent on a per-play, on a per-game basis since getting into the league in 2017 out of UTEP. This guy has been one of the best per-game running backs that we've seen, and that is not hyperbole, Tyler. This guy has delivered every time he has been giving any sort of meaningful snap share in any game. He has come up and given big-time numbers. 8 touchdowns last year while sharing the backfield with Jamal Williams. Now, he's still going to share the backfield with Jamal Williams to a certain extent, but I think we're going to see him in much more of a true workhorse role. This guy can run the ball. He can deliver in short yardage and goal line situations. He can catch it out of the backfield. Basically, I think we should be talking about him the way that we talk about Ezekiel Elliott or Alvin Kamara or Christian McCaffrey. I think he is that sort of player. He is going to get that sort of opportunity this year, and when he does, for me, a top 5 running back who's coming at barely a top 15 price.
For those that don't know Michael Beller, a huge Chicago Bears fan, he will die on the Aaron Jones hill. A Green Bay Packer running back.
Head not hard.
He will do that. I promise you that. But I do agree. I think Aaron Jones now with a fresh opportunity. We know the skill, the athleticism, the ability he has flashed, and you make good points about his rates, his efficiency per game, per touch. He is as good as the names that we mentioned as the top in the game. Will he get that opportunity, that volume this year? I hope so, if I'm a Green Bay Packer fan and if I'm a fantasy owner of Aaron Jones. I look at Chris Godwin. That's who I think is going to break out this year for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We know what that offense was a season ago, vertical passing game with Monken calling the shots, but now it's Bruce Arians, who might be the godfather of the vertical passing game right now in the National Football League. We know what that offense was able to do when he was in Arizona, the heydays of Carson Palmer, David Johnson, and Larry Fitzgerald, but now he's working with Mike Evans, one of the best vertical threats in the game because of his length and size. He has Jameis Winston, someone who is not afraid to take risks down the field and give his wide receivers opportunities to make those chunk plays, those big touchdowns. And this is not a slight at Mike Evans because I know how good Mike Evans is, one of the best wide receivers in the game. But I don't even know if he's the best wide receiver on his team. That's how highly I think of Chris Godwin. Godwin can show ability at times, and this is like Aaron Jones. The rates per play, per route run, per time he touches the ball, he produces at a Mike Evans level. He produces at an Odell Beckham Jr. level. So I think Godwin now with Deshaun Jackson out, Bruce Arians in, and a prove-it year for Jameis Winston is going to get the volume and opportunity to see him turn into a wide receiver 1 or very high-end wide receiver 2. If players must break out, there's always players that bust and disappoint. Is there a name you're looking at right now that people have high hopes for that may become a disappointment when we get to December?
Yeah, I'm really worried about Damian Williams. I think that the draft stock for him has just risen a little bit too high. And the reason why I'm concerned about him is Kansas City really doesn't have any reason to be loyal to him. Remember, it took a suspension to Kareem Hunt and an injury to Spencer Ware for Damian Williams to get in there at all. Now, all credit due where it is due. He did deliver when he got that opportunity, but this was a guy who just sort of muddled around during his time in Miami. He muddled around before that suspension and that injury in Kansas City, and now he's dealing with an injury of his own in training camp. If there's a reason why we're seeing a still and not any video of him, it's because he's got a hamstring injury in training camp, hasn't even put on the pads, hasn't done anything in camp just yet. Kansas City can easily turn the page if they need to. Even if he comes back and struggles, they can turn the page if they need to. I'm not sure. I'm not totally sold that it's going to be a one single back situation that it was in Kansas City last year. And that's why I think Damian Williams is going just a little bit too high right now in fantasy leagues.
I wish Joe Mixon played in the Kansas City offense because then he might be the number 1 overall pick.
Yes.
But he's in the Cincinnati Bengals offense, and I do like that they have Zach Taylor and a new regime there that they're going to build this offense around. But I don't know what Andy Dalton is at this point in his career. I don't know if A.J. Green's going to be healthy. So if defenses are able to key and focus on Joe Mixon. I don't know if he's going to deliver on where he's being drafted right now. Almost right at that level of the Ezekiel Elliott's, Christian McCaffrey's, and the Alvin Kamara's, because he is looked at as a 3-down back there, which I believe he is, but I just think he's going to have trouble making the most out of the opportunities he's given because defenses will easily be able to focus on him, and Cincinnati likely will be playing from behind a lot this season. The best way to win a fantasy league, though, is not by who you draft. That's important, but it's who you pick up off the waiver wire. Is there a name right now that goes undrafted but will be a waiver wire wonder come week 7 or 8 of this season, maybe propelling your team to fantasy stardom?
Yeah, Washington has probably the worst wide receiver group in the league this year, but someone there is going to lead that team in receiving. I don't think it's going to be Josh Doxson. I think we've all been sold down that river one too many times. I don't think it's going to be Paul Richardson, another guy who has a lot of trouble staying healthy. I look at the guy who they've got tabbed to be their slot guy, Trey Quinn, a guy who I think can just really take that role and run with it. Dwayne Haskins eventually is going to start at some point this season. Obviously, Case Keenum probably starts the summer as the guy on top of the depth chart, but eventually we're going to see Dwayne Haskins get in there. And Trey Quinn, a guy who is an incisive route runner who can get open a lot in the middle of the field. Chris Thompson could be a little bit of an issue for him. Jordan Reed could be a little bit of an issue for him. But Quinn certainly is a real big athletic guy and can be someone who ends up being a security blanket for Dwayne Haskins. I like him to be the leading receiver on this team. Anyone who's a team's leading receiver is going to show up in fantasy leagues.
Yeah, definitely a PPR name to keep an eye on. It's funny you mentioned that Washington has no wide receivers. Maybe their best pass catcher outside of Jordan Reed is Chris Thompson, a running back. And Thompson right now, Darius Geis is going to be the guy after his redshirt injury season. He's going to be the guy who carries the load. But Chris Thompson has always been explosive. Whether it be Jay Gruden calling the plays or back when Sean McVay was in charge of this offense and Kirk Cousins was there, Chris Thompson has always been one of the best pass catchers out of the backfield. And even though he's 5'8", 150 pounds, soaking wet, he has shown ability to run the football between the tackles and near the goal line. He's not going to get 10, 12, 15 carries a game, but he's proven to be able to make the most out of the 5 to 6. And we know he'll get 10, 12 targets a game because they have quarterbacks like Case Keenan who can't push the ball down the field, and Dwayne Haskins, whose head's probably going to be spinning as he gets adjusted to the NFL game. So check down city to Chris Thompson, a PPR giant, someone who can be explosive. I think he is going to be the top pass catcher on that team in terms of excitement and turning those opportunities into yards and touchdowns.
Might have to have a little side bet, a little Trey Quinn, Chris Thompson side bet.
Chris Thompson side
bet. The most
bet
exciting side bet you could possibly figure out in the entire NFL.
You got yourself a deal right there, buddy. All right, we're just getting started here on this edition of Inside the League, our fantasy football preview special. When we come back, our buddy Matt Camp is going to join us. Time to talk some tight ends. They're the top 3, and there's everyone else. But when do you draft either Kelsey, Ertz, or Kittle? Find out next on Inside the League. Back here on Inside the League, a special fantasy football preview special. We know there are 3 tight ends and then everyone else in the National Football League when it comes to fantasy production. Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, and George Kittle. You see what they did a season ago. I mean, those are wide receiver 1 caliber numbers when it comes to fantasy output. So we have to discuss this trio. Tyler Jacobs here with Michael Beller of The Athletic and our good friend Matt Camp joining us right now from Bleacher Report and Sirius XM. All right, Matt, when it comes to these 3 tight ends, let's remove that tight end distinction. We saw the output last year. Should we be drafting these 3 names like we would draft wide receiver 1s or high-end wide receiver 2s in the 1st and 2nd round?
I think that's a great way to think about it because sometimes people just have that thought in their head, well, it's a tight end, it's not a wide receiver. They can't be at that level. And these 3 guys, specifically Kelce, is in that wide receiver 1 category. He was in there last season. We saw the numbers. And then there was a time in this offseason where with the Tyreek Hill suspension looming, Travis Kelce was going in the 1st round. Now that Hill is definitely going to play, I still like Kelce as a top half of the 2nd round pick. Like you said, just not cover the name if you have to. Cover that it says T next to his name because this guy does play at a wide receiver 1 level. I have Kittle just in front of Ertz, but I think they're a step down from Kelce. Ertz may have more value in your PPR leagues, knowing what he did last year, setting a record for most receptions ever by the tight end, while Kittle set the record for most yards ever by the tight end. What I see in San Francisco, though, is a bunch of young but unproven receivers for the most part outside of George Kittle. So I still think he gets the lion's share of the targets in San Francisco, clearly ahead of everybody else. And then for Zach Ertz, I think we'll see a little bit more of Dallas Goedert. You have Alshon Jeffrey coming into the season healthier. And, of course, Deshaun Jackson adding a deep threat there. I am in on Carson Wentz. I still love all three of these guys. I would say that Kelce is definitely somebody to think about in the top of the second round. But I think Ertz and Kittle can be thought of on that second, third round turn.
Matt, unlike some recent seasons, it's not projecting to be a great year for rookie wide receivers. Hollywood Brown, A.J. Brown, Paris Campbell, the top of the rookie crop of receivers are all guys who we're looking at as in that wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6 range. Is there any one of these guys who, when you get to that spot of your draft, you are targeting and you do think could end up being someone who is a regular or semi-regular fantasy starter?
The easy answer here may be N'Keal Harry, a first-round pick for the Patriots. Certainly needs there in the receiving corps. But I'm going to look out to Seattle and look at DK Metcalf. Maybe the most polarizing prospect of the top guys in the 2019 draft at wide receiver. But I see an opportunity here. Doug Baldwin retiring, vacating over 18.3% of the target share. Hey, you throw Mike Davis in there, over 10% of the target share. And I know a lot of people are high on Tyler Lockett, and I understand that. Efficiency has been the name of the game for him, but a target share should jump up for him. But can he keep that efficiency up? I know they're going to run the ball a bunch with Chris Carson and Rashad Penny, but I think there's got to be a second option here in the passing game. And the talent of DK Metcalf, to me, when it's at its best, it really jumps off the chart. So if I'm looking at a rookie who has a chance to make an immediate impact and could have the most importance to his team, I do like DK Metcalf.
Yeah, we know he blew up the combine. The measurables are all there, and he's going to have a quarterback in Russell Wilson who knows how to get the ball to capable players. We saw him turn Doug Baldwin into a very relevant fantasy wide receiver. If Metcalf can live up to that with his measurables and speed, he could be a star in this league. All right, Matt, while we're talking wide receivers, let's specifically look at a couple of names, and you let me know whether you think these are players who are being overvalued or undervalued right now with their ADP, average draft position. Christian Kirk is going to be maybe wide receiver 1, but probably wide receiver 2 at the worst in this new Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray offense. Is he someone you're looking at who is getting drafted before he should, or are people right now maybe sleeping on a potential value?
I think he's going a little high for me. I understand the excitement with the Arizona offense. I have it too. They're actually, in this century, in this decade of offensive minds now with Cliff Kingsbury. But I see Kirk. I see Larry Fitzgerald. You got to throw Akeem Butler in there, Andy Isabella. And oh, by the way, the guy who's going to lead them in targets this year is going to be David Johnson. Now, Christian Kirk last year had a 14.4% target share with less talent around him. I'm not saying he's going to be bad. I'm not even saying he's going to be, not the number one guy. I think he could be. But I don't know if that number one guy in Arizona is going to see a hefty target share and enough to call him where he's been going as a top 35 wide receiver. So I get the idea with the breakout potential. I just think there's too many mouths to feed in Arizona, and I don't think he's the most important one.
Yeah, Arizona was an offense that we talked about earlier in the week as being very intriguing after adding Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray. Certainly a team that there's going to be a lot of ways to get invested in. Another team that we talked about in that vein is the Green Bay Packers. We know what Aaron Rodgers is. We know what Devontae Adams is. Right. We think we know, at least I think I know, what Aaron Jones is. But we're not exactly sure who's going to be that number 2 receiver. You look at Marquez Valdez-Scantling, you look at Geronimo Allison, both intriguing. Are either of these guys people who jump out at you, someone who you might want to go after as someone who you have as a regular starting wide receiver?
Look, Allison for me was a sleeper last year, and over the first 4 weeks of the season averaged more than 15 fantasy points per game. He hurts his groin, gets the concussion, and we don't see him for the rest of the season. I understand it's a small sample size, but when people jumped on Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he was a disappointment. Now, I know there's good talk about both guys, but what I like about Allison is that he's going to work out of the slot. And nobody, according to Pro Football Focus, has a better rating throwing to the slot receiver than Aaron Rodgers. And I love the opportunity. And by the way, yes, we're high on Devontae Adams, but if you're calling Aaron Rodgers a top 4 or top 5 quarterback, then you're invested in somebody else in this passing game. And to me, it's Geronimo Allison. I've seen him go outside the top 45 in wide receivers. I think he could be a top 30 wide receiver this year. I'm back on the Packers. I'm back on Aaron Rodgers. And as a result, I am back on the slot receiver for the Green Bay Packers, Geronimo Allison.
Yeah, we know that Aaron Rodgers has easily sustained 2 fantasy-relevant wide receivers in his time there when you go back to Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb. And now he has Devontae Adams firmly entrenched as a number 1, someone who could potentially be the number 1 wide receiver depending on how this year goes. So if there's someone to emerge alongside that, we know Rodgers can get the ball. We'll spread it out to whoever is open. Let's do a little extra credit here with undervalued, overvalued, because it got me thinking about players in situations where they're a wide receiver 2, maybe with wide receiver 1 potential. In LA, with the Chargers, Keenan Allen is the alpha dog, especially in PPR. We know what he's going to do with his target share and his receptions. But Mike Williams last year was kind of interesting with how much he produced given the opportunity. The guy was a touchdown scoring machine on a per touch basis. So is he someone who can parlay that into more success in 2019, keep the touchdowns up as the volume and the targets go up as well, that touchdown efficiency?
I worry about that touchdown efficiency for a double-digit touchdown guy like Mike Williams. And I love his talent. I was on him last season. Tyrell Williams now with the Raiders, as we know. But you have Hunter Henry coming back. So you wonder if kind of the target share cancellation could be there. Williams' targets go right over to Henry, and I think that's a possibility. And there's someone who can cut into the touchdown share as well. I do believe the touchdown number will go up, or excuse me, the target share will go up for Mike Williams. I would say this, though. When we talk about target share, for a team like the Chargers, barely threw over 500 passes last year. So it's not the same kind of target share and passing options as, maybe the Giants or like we saw with Pittsburgh last year, over 670 passes. So you got to be careful of the efficiency of Mike Williams. I think you'd like to take him as a wide receiver 3, knowing he can give you wide receiver 2 numbers. But I am concerned about the Chargers because they are such a good all-around team, not giving Mike Williams such a high target number in 2019.
All right, great stuff from our buddy Matt Camp of SiriusXM and Bleacher Report. Matt, we appreciate you sharing your insight with us. Best of luck to you. I know you won't need it in all your fantasy endeavors this year, brother.
Thanks, guys.
All right, when we return, Michael Beller hits the touch screen. Time to reveal his top 5 at certain positions. When we return inside the league, our fantasy football preview special. Welcome back to this Inside the League Fantasy Football Preview Special. Tyler Jacobs alongside Michael Beller of The Athletic, fantasy football guru, who you know helps us out on Sauce and Shram each and every year. Beller running backs, they are usually the linchpin, the key, the cog to winning fantasy football. That's why, especially this year, they are going to be picks 1 through 5 in some order throughout most fantasy drafts. So what we've tasked you with doing is giving a cheat sheet to our fantasy football viewers here. We're going to go down in order your top 5 running backs, PPR scoring format for the 2019 season. Let's start at number 5. Who do you have there and why?
Well, we talked about him a little bit earlier, Tyler. Here I have Aaron Jones. I don't need to go over my entire screed again about why Aaron Jones is going to be a breakout player. Here's the important thing to know. Aaron Jones, you're not going to have to take him here. You're not going to have to take him with a top 5 pick. You're not going to have to take him with a top 15 pick. I think he's going to play like a top 5 running back, but you're going to be able to get him late 2nd round, mid 3rd round in most drafts, and he is going to be an absolute steal. I'm willing to reach for him, but I don't think you're going to have to. You're going to be able to get him as the 20th, 25th, maybe even 30th overall pick. I think he's going to play like one of the 5 best players in fantasy football.
All right, I'm guessing that's going to be your most controversial selection up here because the names I think of when it's Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Todd Gurley, who last year was the consensus number 1 and delivered. We know he's dealing with arthritic knee issues right now, but there are some names at this running back spot who can be beasts. So who checks in at 4 in your running back ranking?
Yeah, a consensus top 4 has developed. Now, how you rank them 1 through 4 is going to differ from person to person, but basically everyone has the same 4 in some order. For me, the 4th of the 4 is Christian McCaffrey. The only reason I have him behind the other 3 is a slight concern about the return of Greg Olsen, DJ Moore possibly being a breakout receiver for Carolina, Curtis Samuel being a breakout receiver for Carolina. Christian McCaffrey, make no mistake about it, he's the best offensive player there alongside Cam Newton. There's no doubt about that. He's going to have the most touches in this offense, but he had a huge target number for Carolina last year, and I'm not sure if he's going to be able to match that with a healthy Olsen, with an improved DJ Moore, and with a healthy and improved Curtis Samuel. Still a great pick. I'm happy to have him on my team, but I like the other 3 guys just a little bit more.
His upside to me is someone who he could be the 3rd player in NFL history to join Marshall Faulk and Roger Craig as the only players in the history of the game to have both 1,000 yards receiving and rushing in the same season. All right. Number 3 on this list, you pretty much said you're choosing between Saquon, Zeke, and Alvin Kamara. Which one comes in at 3?
For me, it is Saquon Barkley. Reason being behind the other 2, that New York Giants offense.
Yeah.
I get a little bit of concern about this being a 2018 David Johnson season all over again. Remember, we had Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell before we knew the holdout was going to be a thing as easily our top 2 guys. And then we all thought David Johnson is going to be doing David Johnson things coming back from that wrist injury he suffered a couple of years ago. That Arizona offense really held him back. I worry about that happening to Saquon Barkley. Now, the flip side of that is that Saquon Barkley could see something like 400 touches this season. It is going to be ridiculous, especially with Golden Tate suspension. Who knows what's happening there with Sterling Shepard having the broken thumb. Sure, he might be back by week 1, but they are going to feed Saquon Barkley as much as he can possibly handle. I worry about the efficiency, but this guy is going to have all the work and then some in this New York Giants offense. A great pick anywhere here.
Now, I was just doing Ezekiel Elliott's trademark celebration. Is he number 2 or is Zeke number 1 on your list?
Yeah, we got to go with the runner-up here first, and it is Ezekiel Elliott for me. Now, there is a great argument for Ezekiel Elliott to be number 1. I think he has the safest floor, assuming that he is back, and I do think that there's not a ton of cause for concern. That offense is built around Zeke in a way that the Chargers offense is not built around Melvin Gordon. Zeke's going to be there. Zeke's going to be there week 1, and I think he's going to be a great, great fantasy asset. The reason why I do have him number 2 is because of that slight concern with the holdout. If he does get back, if we are talking about getting into real draft season and he's back, I bump him up to number 1. But for now, he's number 2 for me. Easily the safest floor and a very high ceiling as well. You got to love everything Ezekiel Elliott brings to the table.
Yeah, I do think he will. But Jerry Jones is not going to let him not play games. We already saw what happened in the 90s with Emmitt Smith, and then he got paid and they won the Super Bowl. Zeke will get his money. That means Alvin Kamara, with no Mark Ingram to share the backfield, he is your number 1 PPR running back in 2019.
He is, and this is probably a minority opinion. You're going to see way more Zeke. You're going to see way more Barkley. I think you'll probably even see more McCaffrey in the number 1 spot than Alvin Kamara. But why do I have Alvin Kamara number 1? It's because of that change in the backfield with Mark Ingram going to Baltimore, Latavius Murray coming in. I think Latavius Murray is going to have plenty of a role in this New Orleans offense, but Mark Ingram was a very adept receiver out of the backfield. That is not true of Latavius Murray. I think we could see Alvin Kamara's best receiving season that he's had in the NFL, and that is saying something considering what he's done his first 2 years. Also, last year when Ingram was suspended, he proved he can handle those short yardage situations. He can handle those goal line situations. Latavius, of course, is going to be in the mix for those, but Alvin Kamara, for me, from a PPR league, even a half PPR league, the best combination of rushing and receiving and offense with that New Orleans group. Alvin Kamara, my number 1 overall running back and pick in fantasy leagues.
There you have it from Michael Beller of The Athletic. Great stuff, Bell Cow. Best of luck to all of our fantasy friends in their fantasy endeavors this season.